The moment I learned the truth, the city outside my window looked innocent as a painting, but the glass in my hand felt like ice, and I knew the day would tilt the entire year. I am Helena Montez, 35, a senior bank executive who learned early that power sits quietly behind a smile and a steady voice, that ambition is a patient creature that does not roar, but waits for the right door to swing open. My concealment was never a lie to others. It was a plan I kept folded in my sleeve, a blueprint I trusted to stay invisible until I needed it. The personal hinge that frames this episode arrived on a night when the air tasted of rain and new beginnings, when a man I once believed would walk beside me chose instead to drift toward a warmth I had thought belonged only to a rival world. He had been charming, the sort who could thread a conversation with a joke, then slip a rumor through the seam of it, the way a blade slides under a coat. He was not the villain of every story, not a wicked force marching with drums, but a whispering architect of my doubts, and I had fed him truth after truth in the early days, when trust felt like currency we could both cash in. Then came the betrayal that all the hours I spent counting risk should have warned me about. He did not simply drift. He chose someone who had promised me loyalty. The friend I shared laughter with and confided in as if she were the sister I never birthed. The two of them believed I would never learn the details, that the walls of my office were thick enough to swallow a lie whole. But the truth found a crack in the plaster and slipped through like a draft you cannot seal. I confronted him under the hum of fluorescent light and the clatter of keys, and the confession was not a cry, but a careful, rehearsed surrender. The kind you hear from someone who thinks he has nothing left to lose. He admitted the affair, the betrayal, the way he had chosen appetite over respect, and for a moment the room shrank until it was only the two of us and the echo of the life I had believed we would share. He did not plead for mercy. He offered a counterfeit apology that tasted like guilt mixed with peppermint sweet at first, sharp afterward, and I swallowed it with a calm that felt like a weapon. From there, the betrayal spread its tendrils through the corridors of the bank and into my own bloodstream. My former confidant, the woman I trusted to stand with me as a shield, chose him over our shared history, over the quiet strength I had built with every sleepless night spent poring over balance sheets and risk models. I watched the two of them stand close in the glow of the conference room, their laughter a casualty of the room's seriousness. Her eyes flickering toward him as if he had become the solution to a problem she had long believed would remain unsolved. I did not storm out. I did not scream. I measured the moment, weighed the consequences, and decided to let the misalliance do the damage it would do all on its own, while I prepared a countermove that would be both just and precise, a balancing of scales that would not scorch the room, but would leave the fire only where it belonged, where the light could reach it, and reveal what was hidden. My role had always been to steer, to hold the steering wheel while the weather changed, to navigate chaos with a ledger as my compass. Now I would navigate with more than a ledger. I would navigate with a plan that used their choices against them, that turned their weakness into a wound they could not heal. I pulled the plan from its hiding place in my mind, a strategy I had nurtured in the quiet hours after the floor went quiet and the city slept. The boardroom would never know the full gravity of what I did, but they would feel the effect, and more important, the people closest to the drama would sense the shift in the air. I began to orchestrate a series of moves that would require patience, restraint, and a camera that could see through the gloss and into the motives people kept hidden behind well-pressed suits and smiles that never quite reached their eyes. The man who had betrayed me would find himself offered a position that looked like a promotion, but carried a trap door. A role that would force him to answer questions he did not want to answer, to justify decisions he did not expect to be scrutinized so closely. He would be surrounded by people who would marvel at his supposed ascent while I watched the evidence of his choices pile up, the way a storm gathers mass and pressure before the first crack of thunder. The truth is that revenge is not a scream. It is a patient, careful reshaping of reality so that the wrongdoer wakes to a dawn they did not anticipate, a day when the mirror does not flatter them, and the room does not applaud their bravado. In the weeks that followed, I moved with the elegance of someone used to carrying a heavy load and making it look light. I restructured a portfolio that had once hummed with risk, turning it into a fortress that could weather any misstep by the person I was watching. I asked questions in meetings and listened when others offered silence, the kind of listening that is really a tally of intentions, a quiet counting of the ways a person might betray once more, only this time the cost would be higher. He believed he had the edge because he had the trust of the wrong person, the one who had betrayed me in a private moment I would never forget. But trust is not a curve that rises and falls only on the surface. It has a subterranean map of human frailty, and I knew how to read it. I watched him step into rooms that used to feel like mine, rooms where my presence had always been the first sign of certainty, and I let him perform the acts of confidence that would eventually expose the gaps in his own armor. My former confidant, the friend who had chosen him over loyalty, found that the lines between loyalty and desire are thin as thread, and they snapped under the weight of a single, careful revelation I offered only when the moment were ripe. If you love Helena's journey, like and subscribe to join her next chapter. The moment of exposure came not with a roar, but with a whisper of data, a chart that told a story about leverage, about connections, about a plan I had watched him help to build in the shadows. A plan that could have collapsed the bank if the wrong people had detected its fragility. I did not reveal him through a damning confession in a public hall. I revealed him by letting him walk into a trap he had helped to lay for others, a trap made of his own words and his own choices, a trap illuminated by quarterly numbers that showed where his calculations had grown careless because they had grown personal. The board did not clap when the truth landed. They analyzed, they weighed, they asked questions, and they listened to the quiet sound of a strategy settling into its proper place. The man who had betrayed me, in a moment shaped by his own misread risk and misjudged loyalty, found himself with fewer doors to open and more doors to close. A promotion turned into a probation, a credibility married to a ledger that refused to lie. He learned what I had learned so long ago. In this arena, trust is a currency you invest with care. And a misdeal is not just a loss of numbers, but a loss of identity. I did not celebrate the downfall of a man. I celebrated the restoration of what I believed the bank deserved, the return of a balance of power that had drifted toward vanity and toward fear. I had hoped for something else. Perhaps a chance to move forward with a partner in life who would stand by me without the hidden pressure of a shared secret. But I understood that the world of finance does not offer second chances to those who cling to the wrong kind of loyalty. So I closed the circle with the exactness of a surgeon, not with a shout, but with a final, quiet act that left him standing in a room that no longer belonged to him, while I stepped into one that did, a room where my own name carried the weight of a testament rather than a rumor. And as the city kept beating outside, I tasted the bitter sweetness of justice served cold. a justice earned not by vengeance alone, but by the discipline to see a betrayal through to